The line with us is the president and co-CEO of Free Press, freepress.net, Craig Aaron, and at Free Press on Twitter and freepress.net on the internet. Craig, welcome back to the program. It's been a while since we talked. The FCC, you say, heard the outcry and did its job. Tell us about this.
Yeah, thanks for having me back, Tom. Always a pleasure to be with you. And I like being able to come on and actually share some good news for a change. And that good news is that the Federal Communications Commission last week reinstated what's called the net neutrality rules and what's called Title II of the Communications Act, which is an important part of communications law. And all this had been torn down by the Trump administration, which essentially abandoned or abdicated its responsibility for regulating the internet. That's been restored by FCC Chair Jessica Rosenworcel in the Biden administration, meaning that, again, net neutrality is the law of the land. And net neutrality is this really fundamental but simple idea that says when you go online, you should be able to go wherever you want, do whatever you want, download whatever you want. And it's not up to your phone or cable company to decide which sites and services and apps are going to work and which won't. It should be up to you as the user. And so that's an important and now long fought victory that means the internet is maybe a little closer to working how it should.
There's also an issue of privacy, is there not, Craig?
No question about it. This is where there's been ups and downs over the last 10 or 15 years, fights on this issue of net neutrality. But the key thing that the FCC did is they said the Federal Communications Commission has the authority to regulate the internet because it's a telecommunications service. It's a two-way conversation. And that gives the agency a lot more ability to protect privacy, which is a top concern of people everywhere, to be able to step in if your phone or cable company is violating your privacy, because they, of course, know a lot about you, who you're calling, where you're going, all of these things. So it's very important that regulators have the tools to step in if and when there's a problem.
Yeah. What's going to happen? I mean, the phone companies, when they got, when Ajit Pai, the Verizon lawyer who Trump put in charge of the FCC in 2017, when he ended the Title II net neutrality protections, my understanding is that right away, the internet service providing industry started tracking everything we do, selling our information all over the country, started cutting deals with big, internet providers, particularly some of the streaming providers, to give them fast lane service and things like that. So there's these two things. There's the kind of the remnant of the fast lane, slow lane stuff, and I don't know how much that ever really caught on or how big a problem that became for people. And then there's also they could compile all this information about every website you ever visited. They could read your emails. They could read, everything coming in and going out. They've been compiling this stuff for, 7 years now? And, what are they doing with all that data that they've got on us already?
Well, I think you sort of raised two different issues. So one, in terms of them, interfering, fast lanes, slow lanes, a lot of those plans, though they've admitted time and again that given the ability to discriminate, they'd be happy to do so. A lot of those were thwarted because the state of California actually passed a law when the FCC abandoned their authority. California said, hold on, we're going to step in and at least protect those core net neutrality protections. So that's something that did happen, that bought some time for, again, now this new proceeding to come underway under the Biden administration for them to actually get it right. So that's a step in the right direction. We're able to avoid some of the worst case scenarios. When it comes to privacy, we still have a really fundamental need for comprehensive privacy legislation. We don't have updated laws protecting our privacy. And these are things that, show up in everything that we do. Our ability to rent an apartment or get federal aid or, any number of things where, the data and how you're profiled, as we know, there's sort of algorithmic abuse happening in every facet of society. They're using it to set people's jail sentences. All this data fits into all these things, and all these companies know if they have access to this data and they can sell it, that's where they're going to make money. So what we do want is these companies, if we're in doing business with them and everybody wants that internet connection so they can do whatever they want to do, so they can listen to this show and watch these videos wherever they might be if they can't happen to, tune in and get it over the air. So we know that they're going to have this information, but what we want these companies to do is just do the job of connecting us to the internet and then get out of the way. They don't need to be collecting all of this extra information and marketing and selling it to spying agencies and what have you. There's simply no reason for them to collect the vast majority of this information. This authority helps. What would help even more is Congress finally acting for comprehensive privacy legislation that puts people back in control of their own data.
Yeah, I'm completely with you. We're talking with Craig Aaron. He's the president and co-CEO of freepress.net. Craig, I don't know if I've told you this before, but Nigel Peacock and I for, a couple of decades back in the 70s, from the mid 70s through the late 90s, I guess. It would have been right up until 97. We ran a whole bunch of forums on CompuServe, for CompuServe. Mm-hmm. And we're very well paid for that. I mean, we had 20, 30 people who were working with us as sysops. We had a monthly budget of a little over $20,000 a month that CompuServe gave us. And we kept the forums clean. And because back then, prior to the 96, Section 230 of the Telecommunications Act, back then, right, if somebody did something wrong on one of those CompuServe forums and we didn't catch it within a reasonable period of time and remove it, CompuServe could be held liable. That produced a very reasonable internet experience. I mean, this was before HTML. This was before the web.
Yes.
But we had clean places and we kept the lights on and we got a lot of good stuff done. And in fact, we produced a book out of the ADHD forum that I ran that is now in the Smithsonian, as an example of technology and medicine. Is there any serious effort? Is there any kind of growing consensus among members of Congress that, number one, Section 230 went too far when it just eliminated all liability? I mean, the New York Times still has liability for what they publish. Why doesn't Google, right? Or why doesn't Facebook or Twitter, number one? And number two, the transparency of the algorithm. I mean, it seems like it would be such a simple thing. There's all these allegations and charges that ever since Mark Zuckerberg started having, private dinners with Donald Trump, that Facebook has been amplifying right-wing voices, and that Elon Musk is now overtly, he's tweaked his algorithm to suppress progressive voices and amplify, conservative voices. Why is it so hard for Congress to simply pass a law saying that any algorithm on a social media system or site has to be open source or publicly disclosed?
Well, I think it's a great question, Tom. I think the why is it so hard is an age-old answer that you're very familiar with, which is, billions of dollars spent on lobbying.
The Supreme Court legalized political bribery, yes.
So there you go. So you've certainly covered that topic at length for a long time. And the same factors are at play here. And of course, these Silicon Valley companies, which started out kind of clueless when it came to Washington, have now adopted all those proven strategies that they borrowed from the oil companies and the tobacco companies and the telephone companies too. So that's standing in the way of a lot of good policy making, even though people are really outraged. And I think, in terms of algorithmic transparency, I certainly agree. We definitely need that window in so experts can hold them accountable, so that independent academic researchers who can actually understand what's going on and evaluate the algorithms in the computer science have access to this, and it can be independently audited. These are things that we need to happen. I would agree with that. With Section 230, we may not be in exactly the same place, but I think there's some good common ground. So I don't think you just want to throw out Section 230 and suddenly you have, sites where people are posting, making you liable for whatever's posted there. But I do think there's a middle ground where we talk about, what did these companies know? Where are they pulling the strings and tipping things in a certain direction? And if you can demonstrate that that's happening, then you should be able to take action. You should be able to sue these companies when they are legitimately at fault because of decisions they've made that have endangered people or done other things to discriminate and the like. I don't think it's a wholesale just throw out.
I'm not suggesting that. I mean, when we ran these forums for CompuServe,
we do.
When we ran the forums for CompuServe, the word that we got from their VP of legal was that basically we had 24 hours to take down objectionable content, and that would be considered a good faith effort. And if it cost them millions of dollars to pay all these sysops to do this across hundreds of forums. We just ran 34 of them. Zuckerberg is making billions of dollars a year. he would still make billions if he had to start paying the people who are running the various sites and groups on Facebook. He would make less money, but he certainly has the budget to do it. And
I couldn't agree
with the
more.
24-hour window, why not just give them something very similar to the liability that newspapers, radio, and television have?
I think we do need that kind of actions, common sense reform, to where when the actions of these companies are causing harm, they can be held accountable. I think that's something most people can agree on. It makes sense. The other thing we need really see from politicians right now is a lot more pressure on these platforms, while wielding the threat of real changes here on what they're doing right now. Because as you suggest, Mark Zuckerberg and others are making billions and billions of dollars. And what are they doing? They're cutting the jobs, the trust and safety jobs. They're cutting even the insufficient number of moderators that they had working here as we go into an election year with incredibly high stakes, not just in the United States, but around the world. And everything that's, terrible in English is far worse in other languages where they don't have even the baseline staff actually stepping in.
Are there any members of Congress who are really good on this? I know Josh Hawley wrote a book about it, oddly enough.
I don't know that he makes the top of my list.
I think Ron Wyden is probably one of the most well-informed.
Ron Wyden is a great one on so many of these issues because he also, maybe more than any other member of Congress, really understands the dangers of surveillance and how this data is being manipulated. So he's been pushing bills like the Fourth Amendment's Not for Sale Act, which prevent government officials from buying commercial data in order for the purposes of spying. He's been out front on that, as well as, of course, all the spying authority stuff. So I think Ron Wyden's a good place to start. Ro Khanna is someone who's looked at these issues. There are many, many members. Bernie Sanders, of course, on so many issues, has been a leader here. Ed Markey of Massachusetts. These are all folks who are serious about looking at technology and its impact on society.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Craig
Tom.
Aaron,
Appreciate it.
freepress.net. Check it out. Craig, thank you so much.
Thanks again, Tom. Appreciate it.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
18 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with more of the news of the day and your calls in just a moment.